and welcome to an honest walkthrough and review of Allison's Dulcet Voice by the Crow Hill Company. Now, this library to me sits in between that of your more everyday bread and butter, quiet and voice library where you just have long sustains and shorts, and your more ambient and texture voice libraries. This is kind of that happy, perfect medium, that little niche in between where you still have that beautiful sustains and longs, but you don't quite have legatos, and you have some shorts as well. But at the same time, there are these textures and gestures and little melismas inside it. It's a beautiful and quite gorgeous library that's really grown on me. That piece you just heard at the beginning was actually composed just using sample libraries by the Crow Hill Company. And I really wanted to try and show off what you can do with this library. And if you want to know more about that piece, I will be walking through and showing you more of that at the end of this walkthrough and review. But let's get into this library. First off, the price. Starting price £59. Not bad. And £79 will be the full price. And what are you getting for that? Well, let's jump in and actually have a look at the plugin itself. Beautiful. I always love the Crow Hill designs. They're absolutely gorgeous. You have this beautiful animation in the middle that when you're playing, as you probably saw in the beginning, moves around. Sadly, there is no interaction with this middle bit. I kind of wish there was. If you click on the top, you have your different articulations. All of these are voices except the bottom one. I say the bottom right one, which is a synth. You have the entire keyboard. Now, what's nice, every single one bar the actual synth voice has these different valve sounds: R, E's, O's, Oo's and E's. And what's nice, every single one has different bits inside it, especially with the first one, the refrains, where you have these little melismas inside it. Every one is kind of different. And don't forget, if you're composing in a certain key with these, you actually do need to pick the key you're working in. Their user manual is very handy when it comes to these sorts of things and explaining everything, especially these four different macros that you have around the edge. We have shimmer, velvet, delay, and reverb. Well, delay and reverb is delay and reverb, quite simple. And if you click the plus button, you can dive deeper into those. The velvet and shimmer, well, I'm actually going to refer to the manual for this so you can see for yourself. Beautiful manual as always, and explains everything very simply. But here's your four macros. They describe them very well. The shimmer is a granular pitching shifting effect that adds even more magic to Dot's vocals. We'll demonstrate that in a second as well. Delay, there's your delay. Velvet is a special request from Dot, a macro based on a series of EQs, compression, and small amounts of frequency shifting. And then within that, we have sheen, squeeze, and motion, which is your sheen is your EQ, your squeeze controls the amount of compression, and your motion controls the to increase the amount of modulation in the processed effects chain. So there you go. That's kind of the macros. Definitely refer to the manual if you want to know more about that. But back into the plugin. Now, the one problem I kind of ran into, especially when I was composing with this, is the limiting range. Now, I completely understand why that is, because the vocalist, of course, has a limited range, and I kept wanting to drop down to this B right here, but of course, it's not there, and I composed a lot in D major, and so that limiting range was a little bit annoying to me, but understandably, the vocalist has a limited range. It'd be nice to stretch it, but understandably, the degrade in the quality of sound, and that they do little bits inside each of these samples, so it's not as simple as just dropping the pitch. You can tune it down if you really want. There is a tuning button right at the top. The other thing you'll notice with this library is every single one, they're one-shot sounds. For example, this refrain, if I just hit a D, beautiful glide, that slide, I love that gesture. But there you go, it ends. I really wish there was a loop button on the side so you can have these loop and maybe just like an attack decay sustain release sort of thing as well. But all these sounds and even the sustains as well are one shots. The only one that isn't, of course, is the synth voice, and that has your full range as well. But I think we've talked enough. It's definitely time to dive into some of these sounds and mess with some of these effects. So right out the box, let's listen to a couple of these different sounds, starting with the refrains. Now, you will find with each vowel there are different gestures, different sounds, so definitely explore each one. But absolutely beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. Let's have a quick look at some of these different macros as well. So, starting with our shimmer, see what it actually does. Really does add a little bit of magic. Yeah, you can hear the granular sort of effect there. That's really cool. I really like that. It does add a lot to the sound. Right, let's turn all that down. I really wish there was a kind of a reset to default button for the macros, because you'll find actually as you swap, I'll just show you right now, that they stay the exact same as you flick through the different articulations. Now, that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you're doing. But again, I wish there was almost a reset button without having to reload the plugin. Right, that's the shimmer. Let's completely turn that off. And there is a little bit of delay on already. That's a nice little effect. Move the rate while it's going. I actually kind of like that effect. I don't think that's what they intended it for, but I know, like, I like that. Right, so that's delay. Delay is delay, and reverb is reverb. And what's nice is you can get a really nice front and personal sound with that nice little bit of warmth in there as well. But at the same time, you get this beautiful whole textures. As I said at the beginning, it really is that bang in the middle between your bog standard vocal library and your texture pad-like vocal libraries. So that is your reverb. Again, I wish there was a reset button. I'm going to put it somewhere like that. And now listen to our velvet, which is our mix of compression and EQ and kind of how much is going to that chain. Definitely squeezes the sound. Like an LFO almost. Well, there you go. So that's your different macros, and that's your refrain spares and your refrains. I do like the fact that we have all these vowels for every single one of them. And of course, I'm clicking on the different ones, but there are key switches down there as well. If you want to do that instead for live performances, I definitely recommend moving between them to create motion, to create more variation within these sounds. But that's refrain spares. Let's look at cascading phrases. And you will find the mod wheel does do some things on some of them and nothing on others. I found it didn't really do anything on the first one, but others it does bring it in a little bit more and change it ever so slightly, while they are velocity sensitive as well. Another thing I'm kind of wishing for is control over the attack, decay, sustain, and release. Because sometimes if I cut off a little bit early, you can hear the cut off, as it were, and with like a bit of control over the release. Anyway, cascading phrases, it's in the name. Let's look at flowing now. See there, if I cut it off and move to the next one, you do get that synthesizer sound, but vocal libraries, the voice is probably the hardest thing to record and sample. I find even like the £400 or £500 vocal sample libraries, you're still gonna have something like that, unless you have a really good legato, but even then, you're not gonna be able to achieve anything like that. Let's move on. Flowing fast. Something a bit more short. This is one I really wish I could add more release to, and I wish it would loop as well. Then again, it is quite a long sample. I'm going to hold that down until it finishes, but yeah, not bad. Nice bit of reverb and get some really nice textures with that. So that's our sustains, motifs. That's your motives. Moving on to our scattered. It is what it says on the tin, and what I like doing with this one, as you kind of see, is hit a note, change the vowel, hold that note, and pick another note, and so you get a little bit of all of them, and you get some really nice variation within it. But it is a nice effect and can add some beautiful textures to your music, although it is a little bit, I feel, uncontrollable. Very much in the name, scattered. So that's that one. Abrupt is just a very short. I feel like I need to take that reverb almost completely off. Is that only one round robin? Well, you're not going to be doing anything like that unless you want that sort of sound. Anyway, last but not least, the synth voices. Now, I absolutely love these. This is where it really becomes a pad texture library. You have the full range of the keyboard, which is really nice because I feel so cramped right here. But you do get some beautiful textures with this. Again, I almost want more control over these. It'd be really nice, attack, sustain, decay, release. Just so I can edit the attack. I feel like I want less attack on some of these, more release on others. Just some basic control. But nevertheless, some really nice additions to this library to add a little bit of variation. I feel like the mod wheel's almost a filter on this. But you still have all these controls as well. You can add delay, shimmer, velvet. I think shimmer is actually my favorite. It does add this beautiful texture to the overall sound. So in summary, I think this library is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's aptly named Dulcet Voice. I love the tone of her voice. I love the textures that you can create with it. It's something different. I love the gestures. You can't get those without recording them. No bread and butter vocal library will give you that. You have to physically have them recorded, and they've done an exceptional job of that. I like the variation you get within this library. You've got those refrains, you've got something a bit more bread and butter, your sustains, your motifs, you've got shorts as well, your abrupts, flowing as well. Got a nice little bit of synth voices as well, something again textury and paddy, so nice variation. I do feel overall it's a little limiting. I do like the macros that you get, they're different, but it'd be nice to have things like attack, sustain, decay, release. Be nice to have a looping option, maybe even an extend range option for some of them, like the sustains. I understand that it's not really possible with like the refrains because of the gestures, the intricate nature of how they've created those, but I find myself cramped in this little area and would like a bit more. Then again, it is a solo vocalist and she can only sing to a certain range, understandably. But For the price, £59 starting off, £79 full price, it's not bad and very competitive within the market. It'll definitely give you a different sound, although saying that, it's recognisably Allison, and if you have a lot of people using it, it might sound a little bit samey in some tracks, but that's simply because it's so recognisable. But again, is this something you're going to be buying? Overall, I really like it and I definitely see myself using it. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments. So moving into the piece that I showed you at the beginning of the video, for this piece I just used sample libraries by the Crow Hill Company. We have 4 tracks of the Dulcet Voice. We have the Vertical, the Cosmos and String Memorations. In all honesty, Cosmos and String Memorations, I didn't really do anything. I just picked a gesturing kind, and then whatever preset I picked on this one, didn't do anything fancy. It just holds the low end. It just gives us a nice little bit of bass and richness. That's one thing I really like about String Memorations. It's something you can just put in and adds that texture and doesn't need a lot of work to make it sound good. Then for the piano, the Vertical, I just used the Intimate Upright, that preset for that. Didn't put any tape or anything on it. I just wanted a really nice, intimate and upfront piano. And for the Dulcet Voices, for the first one, I just used some refrains, and actually after every section, I changed it to a different valve sound to give it some variation. Next, for the next patch, I used some sustains. That gives us these lovely chordal sounds. For Dulcet Voice 3, I used refrain spares. I just wanted something a little bit different from the refrains at the top, and just something a little bit different carrying through these 2 sections here. And then last but not least, I used abrupts to give us these short bits, kind of just to put emphasis on the bits in the piano right here. And in all honesty, I wasn't actually too happy with these abrupts at first, but I left it for the day, came back, and I was actually extremely happy with how they sounded. Now, the one problem I found with composing this piece is I kept wanting to drop down the B because I composed it in D major, and of course our range is limited to C, it can't go further down. And so that again is the one issue I found with the limiting range, but again, I've mentioned that many times. There is a reason for that limiting range. So without further ado, I will show you this piece one last time. I'm just going to show you the vocals. We'll mute everything else so you can actually hear the sound, and I'll take off any processing that I actually did. Just had a little bit of ozone just to mix it all in, to give it a nice little gloss over in the initial one. So now I will show you the raw without any processing, and I'm going to show you just the 4 voices. I did actually do a little bit of recording on my own voice as well, adding it in, which worked really nicely. But I took it off just so you can see the Dulcet Voices in action. Actually, I will add the piano, I'll just turn it down. But overall, a really fun library to actually work with. I really like the fact that the 10 articulations we do have a nice variation. So if you need a longer patch, a shorter patch, something in between, something a bit more scattered, more motifs, more gestures, you have it there. It's not overly complicated, it's very simple, but to the point. And that's what I love about this library. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.